like to call in all my teachers, past, present, and future. TEDxUNCAsheville. And I'd like to call also for you all to take a moment, take a deep breath, if you would. And just allow your energy to drop from your mind and allow it to kind of disperse into your heart. Excuse me. The tree of life is a sacred symbol that has been part of humanity since we evolved into our form of art and writing and creating images on cave drawings, on tapestry that we wove. Our ancestors wove the tree of life into being, literally, the stories they were telling while they were weaving. We can see here a photo of a tapestry from India that is currently being produced that embodies that history. It's hand-woven and it's available at 10,000 villages, fair trade produced, and it shows kind of the diaspora that happened, or maybe it was a universal occurrence that the tree of life kind of just sparked into different people's consciousness around the world as a means for understanding where we come from, where we are growing towards. The tree of life is a gift to us. And the large photo you can see is Yggdrasil. My family and my people come from all over Europe. A large section of my blood comes out of Norse lands, the Nordic peoples, the Vikings. Yggdrasil is a Norse symbol of the tree of life. It embodies Asgard, Utgard, the heavens and the underworld, and then Midgard, Middle Earth, where we live. So we live in a balancing point. Which brings me to my first point, that a tree does not grow from nowhere. A tree, as everything, grows from somewhere. Here I have in my hand a little buckeye seed. Now every buckeye we see in the forest was once this size. Every towering 80-foot buckeye that has grown through time and patience and the gift of the sunshine and the roots in the soil has grown from something this size. But seeds do not come from nowhere as well. They all come from somewhere. They come from a dynamic union of two seemingly opposite forces. Seeds are created by something that the Chinese help us to understand, the yin and the yang, the dynamic interaction of two polar opposites. The yin being passive and moist and holding and caring and loving, feminine. The yang being extroverted, giving, providing, offering, the masculine energy. Not to say that all women are unyielding and unweedy. Unweedy. That's interesting. Women and men all embody masculine and feminine. Yin and yang energy is woven together. We all embody those. So we are not at one of the poles, just as nothing. Everything is a woven tapestry of yin and yang, just as the seed. So what creates a seed? The seed of the tree of life was given birth 4.6 billion years ago when our sun was first coalescing from a ball of flaming gases and objects. The sun formed and the earth slowly formed, and all the planets, the 7 sister and brother planets, were forming. And over 1 billion years it took from that first inception of the sun for life to spark into existence, for the seed to be planted somehow, some way, in the womb of the ocean. That is where life was born. The ocean offered a protective barrier of water from the ultraviolet rays that our Earth's very thin ozone layer did not protect from. In the womb, bacteria and algae developed, coming out, evolving, creating, changing, transforming. And gradually, this developed for another 3 billion years it took. From 3.6 billion years with first life, up to about 500 million years ago, when the first life emerged on sand. How do I change the slides? Where's the left? It's right there. Can you change the slide, please? Great, thank you. Life begins with a seed, the seed of the ocean. This is the black sand beach on Beak. And we kind of have an example of what happened that we can go visit if we choose and have the blessing to be able to do so, and that is Iceland. Iceland sprouted up just 17 million years ago out of the mid-Atlantic ridge, where the Eurasian continent is moving away from the North American plate. And life began in the ocean. And just take a moment and let that sink in, and let that sink in the first cells of algae to grow on land. Think of the waves that washed those onto the shore. Those waves carried life out of the birthing waters, sprouting the seed from the womb, just as pollen fertilizes a flower, creating a seed that can then sprout from the moist soil in the seed bank. So here's the earth about 1 billion years ago, barren wasteland. This is a desert, a black sand desert in between Landmannalaugar and Þórsmörk in Iceland. No life, just rocks and sand. The whole earth, no life. Very little rainfall and precipitation, because ultimately life is what creates that through transpiration of water out of the leaves. There's rocks, epic rocks, all around the earth. We can see all the rocks there are on earth. Right now they're all covered by a thin 30-meter veil of light. In some places, you can still see it. And here we have the Paleozoic era, the Cambrian explosion that brought life, germinating the seed and growing it out onto existence, onto the land. First terrestrial life did not happen until 500 million years ago. And you can see here we have some green moving in. Life moved up the valleys because water was what it relied on. What we rely on, all of us are made of water. All of life is made of water. All cells that are living have water. There are cells that can go dormant without water, but in order for them to grow, they must have water. And so life emerged and grew as a tree up the valley. And how does a river look? If you take a look at the satellite, the Google Earth of the French Broad River, you can see a main trunk coming up from Tennessee. You can see all these branches going off with the Ivy River and the Swannanoa River, and numerous creeks going all off just like a tree. And it gathers that water and drains it just as it brings life up into it. This happened. Oh, there's some pictures of me in Iceland. I worked in a tomato greenhouse where they're harnessing geothermal energy to grow tomatoes in the summer. In the winter, there's very little sunlight in Iceland. And there's me relaxing. You can see that the lush green grass has succeeded. That's primary succession. It's the first plants. And eventually, I imagine trees will adapt and gradually move up this valley, providing that secondary succession that comes over after land has been colonized and soil has been created. And that's the Hot River. I totally recommend checking it out if you're ever in Iceland. It's a river that flows hot as a hot tub. Here's a tree, a great white oak, probably my favorite tree on this beautiful campus of UNC Asheville. You can find it just on the other side of Mullen Park. This tree symbolizes how life evolved, because after life burst forth from the ocean up the valleys and colonized the land, starting mainly at Ecuador, where there was lots of sunlight all the time, lots of water, lots of nutrients, very moist climate, and it moved gradually, feeding the rivers as they went north and south respectively. This is how life grew into its present form. Into its present form where we find life today. And where do we find life today? We find lots of humans. Humans everywhere. We have humans living in every continent except for Antarctica, and those scientists are living in Antarctica, so there are humans living in Antarctica. It's not a happy picture. It's not a happy picture, and I have some grief-filled news to bring to you all today. Because just as humans have proliferated, so too have we drained energy that would be feeding other branches of the tree of life. We have sapped energy that would flow to the great white tigers of Siberia. We have sapped energy that would have flown to the tree frogs of the Amazon, through our habit of eating beef and a cattle ranching that has destroyed numerous tracts of land. The human branch of the tree of life branches just like every other species. At a certain point in history, it evolves characteristics that are unique, that can no longer reproduce with other characteristics of a very similar species. It becomes a different species, a different branch, diverging from the path. And our branch has seen great times. Our ancestors have lived in harmony with the natural world, and that is a fact. It is only in the recent development of human life that 4,000 to 6,000 years ago, we decided that we had enough of scraping out a living, so they say, scraping out a living when we were spending 60% of our time collecting the food, spending 19 to 21 hours a week collecting the food that would feed the whole tribe. That's a week, multiply 24 by 7, 19 to 21 hours a week was spent gathering food. The rest of the time was spent in ritual, in community, sharing, exploring hobbies, crafting, creating things with our hands and our voices. 60% of the population was gathering. The elders and the children were holding down the fort. And so we emerged somehow into a seed-based culture where we would plant only annual plants, plants that would grow in one season, in one cycle of our time moving around the sun. And what happened when we did that? We tamed the natural wild order of things. We tamed them and we controlled them. And we tore up the soil, and we chose what seeds would grow where, and we cared for them tender and lovingly, and they grew, and they fed us. But we had those people who were doing this. The only reason they decided to leave behind the tree crops of our ancestors is because of movement. Movement had to happen, and movement caused the human branch to tame the natural world. Because you can only carry seeds and plant them if they'll grow in a growing season. You can't carry a tree and plant it, and if you move the next 3 years, you will have no tree crops to eat. No nuts will grow in 3 years. Only corn, wheat, rice, the 3 staple crops of the continents. So here we are. We've moved forward, and the Industrial Revolution has happened. It has produced these clothes that I'm wearing, this wild manifestation of technology that I'm wearing. And it has also eaten our fellow beings, that we descended from when the tree burst out of the ocean so many billions of years ago and broke free. Branch. We are all related. Nitayaku Wayasin is a saying of native peoples of this land where we live. All of my relations, we are all related. And if we are not feeding, then we are being eaten. Because when we do not feed, something starves and something drains us. And what I mean by feeding is not simply the act of consumption. We all have to be fed. Each of us has eaten something today. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Raise your hand if you've eaten, please. Each of us has eaten, and it has come from something that was once alive. Now, how many of you have thought about the life that was lived by the plant that fed you today? Did anyone thank the plant that lived? Thank you, Tom. That's beautiful. It's okay. It's okay. We've grown into this culture. It's not our fault. It's not our individual fault. We've grown into this. We've been raised not appreciating what feeds us. Not necessarily appreciating it enough, at least. So this timer is supposed to be clicking, but it's not. How am I doing on time?
You got it.
All right. And so the branch of humanity is very precarious. We've grown and mutated into this weird, exotic form where we've lost our connection to the heartwood of our ancestors, the heartwood that all successive wood is built on. It's fragile. Great wind could bring it to its knees. We were born into this. This is us. This is who we are. So just let that sink in for a second. You know, 2 years ago, I'd like to share a personal story. 2 years ago, I was confused and wondering what the hell I was here for. Is that okay if I said hell? You can bleep that out. I was wondering why I was here. What was my purpose on earth? I've been raised in this culture. I love my family. But I don't know why. I didn't know why I was here. I still wonder sometimes, as we all do. And so I went for a walk one day. I used to live in Montford, just on the other ridge across Reed Creek. I went for a walk in Riverside Cemetery, where Thomas Wolfe and O. Henry and many, many prominent figures of Asheville are buried. And I went down and I found myself at the creek, just at the base of the hill, where all these cemetery graves were plotted out. I leaned up against the tulip poplar that was there, and I asked, what am I here for? Why am I here? I'm confused. I don't know. What is my purpose? And there was no answer. There's no answer. And so I realized that there was something in me, there was some grief, some deep-seated emotion that I needed to release. And so I released it. I cried. I let it go. There's a lot of grief for us to let go, believe me. I've let some of it go. I have a lot more. You can laugh, but laugh is an expression of grief. Laughter. So here we are trying to reintegrate human systems back into natural systems. And what better tool than the knowledge that our ancestors have to share with us, because it's still around, those seeds of cultural existence, those seeds that first sprouted off the tree, the trunk of our relations. And those seeds grew and wove, intertwined with all the other branches, sharing those nutrients as they came up the trunk, sharing the sunlight, not overshadowing, taking only what was necessary to provide our existence. And those seeds of our ancestors are within each of us. We are all descended from indigenous people. Many of this room are descended of blood from Europe, I imagine, because that is the primary makeup of America. There were indigenous people living in Europe before the conquerors. There were people living earth-based lifestyles, sharing the knowledge, raising children to grow. Not only to serve as a cog in the machine, but to grow and flourish, heart, body, and mind, understanding. And so that's what I'm going to ask all of you to do. I'm going to ask all of you to go forth in your next meal and ask for food, and thank the food, offer the food your blessings and appreciation. Because the food was alive, and the food is your cousin, growing from the tree of life. We all grew from. We all grow from. We can all fruit. We can all flower. We can all leaf out and receive the warm rays of the sun. It is possible. Please take a deep breath with me, would you? Lesion, lufu, donkion, Old English words. They mean blessings, love, and thanks.